Well, welcome everybody. If someone could drop in the chat, if you can see and hear me, that would be great. My name is Stefania Di Mauronava, and I'm the Director of Development at MetroLab Network, and I will be moderator for this session. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to FormFest 2023. This session, just to make sure you're in the right place, is entitled Lessons Learned from gov.uk Forms Private Beta Launch. Just a reminder that this is a 1-hour session. Our speakers will present first, and then we will have the last 20 minutes or so for questions and answers. If you have a question during the presentation or Q&A period, please use the chat box, and we will moderate the questions out loud so that the recording captures the question and answer. So now I'm happy to get us started with our speakers. I'm happy to turn this session over to Betty, Hazel, Oliver, and Ian, who's also being displayed as Oliver, but Ian, maybe you can raise your hand so folks know it's you. And we will be getting started. So take it away, UK team.
Great, thanks. Can you hear us okay? Yeah, great. Okay. Can you see anything on the screen? No. Why is that? Let's just see if we can do that. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, that's coming up now, Ian, yeah.
Great, okay. Okay, lovely. Yeah, great. Welcome to our talk. Hi, I'm Ian.
Hello. Hi everyone, I'm Betty.
And hi, I'm the real Oliver, although Ian's using my account for his screen as well.
I'm the imposter, Oliver. Yeah. But we are delighted to be talking with you. Yeah, really pleased to be able to share some ideas, to hear about your ideas about public sector or government form builder platforms with such a global network of people. So welcome and thanks. It is great to meet you. And as you can see, we have, this is our team. We've got people, we've got dogs and cats. This is how we roll. Okay, we don't often go to gigs together actually, but if we did, our team would look like this. So now that we are all well acquainted, here are the things that we're going to talk about. So we're going to discuss our mission, problems that we're trying to solve, some of the lessons that we've learned, and also what's coming up with our work. We'll also do a quick demo of the platform, and we'll leave about 20 minutes or so at the end for questions and answers. So I'm going to hand over to Betty to discuss our mission.
Yes, thanks Ian for that intro. Yes, I'm going to talk about why gov.uk forms exist and in what context within the Cabinet Office. So we are based in GDS. So GDS is on the mission to help government deliver great services for everyone, and particularly, so gov.uk forms is in the Digital Service Platforms Directorate. Next slide. And the vision for gov.uk forms is that all forms on gov.uk to be accessible, easy to use, and quick to process. And so yeah, so this is the vision. This is where we exist, and all this comes out because we know that online HTML forms are easy to use, they're accessible, and they're quicker to process. And this is compared to the document-based forms like PDFs, Word documents, and spreadsheets that we have. We're going to talk about it a bit later in terms of how we were able to prove this even in research. But then when we talk about online HTML forms, this is also nuanced and there's a bit of context because in some cases, it may depend on the users or the needs of a specific service. And therefore, online forms may not be the right answer for them, for example. So in such cases, you may have conversations on email or a phone conversation, but generally compared to document-based forms, HTML forms are more accessible. And also, and that's because they're easier for the person to fill in and even for the processors to be able to process that data easily. And it also makes sure that people are able to complete forms from the start to the end easily without missing in key data, and therefore it means we're also having clean data being submitted, and which translates to people accessing services that they need. Next slide, please. And we're also doing all this in the context of one of the biggest challenges that we are facing, which is that we have more than 10,000 document-based forms on GovUK. And these now are the forms that we're talking about. So these are either PDF forms or other inaccessible formats. And also an important statistic that so these forms are also added and published on GovUK at least one a day. So the problem persists, and therefore that's why we exist, to make sure that we intervene and help to sort this and ensure people are receiving the services in an accessible manner. Next slide. So going on and expounding on how document-based forms can actually be quite harmful in service deliveries, that so they're actually difficult and even impossible to complete. And that means that users, especially who have a range of disabilities, find these forms very difficult to interact with. So that's navigating them probably with assistive technology. And that means that users can't simply access services. And actually those that manage to complete the forms and send them, they may have to print them out, send them by mail. So it means a longer user journey that is quite unfriendly in terms of time and the costs as well. And also document-based forms pose a legal challenge against the UK government because of all this. And therefore it's quite a huge problem for both the people who are trying to access the government services and also the government itself. And so it continues to become a growing problem that we really want to tackle. Next slide. And so what we did is that we have recognized all these issues and we are building a new platform that can help tackle those problems. And that's also because we cannot build all these forms ourselves. So we have decided to provide a form building tool that can help civil servants be able to build their forms and offer better services in government. So we are creating a platform that's accessible and that it's going to be used by the civil servants in their departments, who will then create the forms that their services depend on. And all this helps us meet the goal of tackling and ensuring that we have better data quality. And we are going to show you what this actually looks like and what we mean in the next section. Over to you, Oliver, to demo the product and what we have so far.
Okay, thanks, Betty. I'm going to share with you a screen of our product. So hopefully that's coming up. I don't know if, Ian, maybe you should stop your screen share for now, just so everyone can see the full detail of that. Thanks, there we go. So yeah, this is a live demo of Gov.uk Forms. I'm one of the user researchers on the team, so I've been testing this out with lots of people, civil servants, members of the public, people with all sorts of levels of digital skills and different needs. And we have been trying to design this to be as easy as possible, especially for people who have low digital confidence. So some of our target users are people who maybe need to collect information from the public. They don't have a digital team that they can rely on to do that. They don't have the funding to to get a digital team, they have to do it themselves. And as Betty said, lots of them will resort to creating PDFs or creating documents and all of the associated problems with that. So they can use this system instead. So as you can see, our model to start off with is you can sign up with a trial account. So anyone with a gov.uk email address, someone who works for central government, the central part of the national government in the UK, can get a trial account. They can get onto this and they can create a form, and that's what we're going to do now. So we'll create a form. So first of all, we need the name of the form. We're going to make a form now for people to apply for their pet to receive an award. Not a real government service, I must say, no matter how much we might like it to be. But for today, that's our example. So that's going to be the name of the form. We'll create that. And then we're presented with this sort of central screen for all of the things, all of the tasks that you need to do to create a form. So you can add and edit questions, you can add a declaration at the end for people to agree to before they submit the form. That's having a declaration at the end is sort of to a certain extent covering the need that people have to ask for people to sign a form. It's not a digital signature, it's not a legally binding thing, but lots of people, they just want people to declare that they agree with certain things or that they're submitting true information before they submit the form. So you can use that for that. You can put information about what happens next. We've only got a trial account, so we can't set this up just yet, but when you have an editor account, you can set up an email address for the completed forms to be sent to, and the idea is they'll be sent to a shared inbox that might be managed by a team of the form processors that Betty was talking about. And you can provide various other links and information and make your form live. So we'll do what most people need to do to begin with, this next bit that's not started, and we're going to add and edit our questions. So every time you create a question, you're presented with these different types of answers that you can choose. So the first thing I want to do is ask for someone's name. And then it gives us some options based on that particular answer type. So we'll go for full name in a single box. And then do we need the person's title? I'm going to say no. Most government forms, we wouldn't really need someone's title, but there is still some where people need to collect it. So, so we have that option in there, but I'm not going to have that. Then I get onto this edit question page, so I can put in the question how I want it to be put in. Now, this is pretty obvious for this one, what is your name? But there might be some forms where people need to ask for a name in a different way, or they're asking for somebody else's name. In the background with this name question type, it will be creating a question that interacts with the autofill on the form fillers browsers when people are filling in the form, so they can use autofill for that. We've got some other options here, which I'm not going to go into just yet. This is a simple question. It's not going to be optional, and we just get a bit of a review here. So I'm going to save that, make the next question. Another straightforward question type that we have in here is to ask for people's address. So we'll continue with that. There's some options to do with the formatting and also the validation for what's accepted on that. Most of the time for UK government forms, it'll probably be a UK address, but for some of them, there'll be an international address. And I'm just going to ask, what's your address for that straightforward question, and go on to save and add the next question. So I want to ask now about, this is the award for the pet, remember. I want to ask what the pet's name is. Now, that's not, we could get into a discussion about whether that is a person's name or not. In this case, I'm not going to give it as a person's name. I'm going to use the text question type. So as I go into there, I can choose a single line or a multiple line of text. We'll just have a single line for a pet's name. And we'll put in, what's your pet's name? Now here, we've also got a hint text, which is something that will appear much like this grey text here underneath the question. So you can put in a short hint. So I might put in here, as you want it to appear on the certificate, just to make sure that people think about that when they put the pet's name in. Everything else probably okay on that. So save and add to the next question. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do now is there's 3 categories of pet types of animals that can receive this award. People need to choose one of those. So we'll have select from a list of options for people to select from. And the question that we'll put in here is, what type of pet are you applying for an award for? So we get a slightly different option for this answer type here. We've got some settings and we've got some options. So an animal can only be of one type. So we need to select, people can only select one option. And I could put none of the above, but for this particular one, the animal has to be either a dog, a cat, or if I add another option, a small mammal. Okay, so those are the options for this. We can continue. Okay. Now, as I said, these awards are only available for certain types of animals, those 3 types. So we probably need to add a bit more information about that. And probably a bit more than just a hint text. The hint text is meant for just one line. If we go into this guidance, we can add a bit more in here. Now, as you can see, we're guiding people through with sort of written content in here to help them understand how they're using this, remembering that we're designing this for people who are maybe not too confident with digital tools. So we need to give this page a heading because now adding guidance is becoming more than just a question. It's got some more content. So we've got type of pet, and we can write the guidance in here. We've got an editor. I'm just going to paste in some stuff that I wrote earlier, but the way this is set up is with Markdown, so people can input Markdown. A lot of more experienced people who publish content already on the gov.uk website will be really familiar with Markdown that's used elsewhere. Some people might not be familiar though, so we've got these buttons up here which you can use to set up your bullet point lists, some headings, links, that kind of thing. You've also got some formatting help down here, which talks you through how to create things in Markdown. And you can preview that here, and we can see how that's going to look. My link's coming up there because I put it in with the brackets for Markdown. My bullets are coming up, and so on. So yeah, that's the guidance added on there. So let's close this up. Let's continue, and I'm going to carry on creating my form. So we can just check there that we've got our guidance in there. We've got our question set up how we want. That's all looking good to me. So we'll save and add the next question. Now, the next question is going to be a text question, a single line, because it's quite simple. And it's going to be, what breed of dog or cat is your pet? I don't think there's too much explanation needed there, so I'll go on to the next one. The next question is another select from a list question. And that's going to be, move through here, what type of achievement has your pet made? We've got 3 different categories for these awards. So and you can only have one category at a time. We've got 3 options, so I'll add another option. So the different categories are speed, distance, and intelligence. Okay, here we go. We've got our 3 options. Now this is another area where we probably need to add a bit more information. So I'm going to add some guidance, and the title for that page is type of achievement. And then I've got some content that I prepared earlier in here to tell people a little bit about those different categories. And you can see here, I've just pasted this in actually from a Google Doc, but it's brought the formatting across. I use the headings in Google Docs, and it's, as I pasted it in, it's figured out the Markdown for that. So we're hoping that will help some people who prepare things in a word processor and paste it in. If we look at the preview guidance, we can see that's put them in as headings. They may not have prepared it in such a way with headings, so they could use the buttons to put in those headings, or use just pure Markdown, as it were, typing it in and get that information in there. Okay, so there we have it. I'm going to save that question, and I've got one last question to put in, which is one of those questions that so many forms have at the end, more than a single line of text. and ask, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your pet? Just so people can add in more information. One of the things that we found in some of our very early research was that with paper forms, they often have the affordance that if people can't quite fit their answers into the boxes, not so much due to length, but because they maybe can't communicate what they want to within the confines of the questions, that they often write in the margins on the back or in different places. So we think it's probably quite good to have a question to allow people to ask anything else on there for some types of forms. So that's my questions done. I'm going to save those, and I'm just going to go back to my questions. And here we can see all the different questions that I made. We can move them up and down and change the order. I can go in and edit them, and lots of options there. Now, you might have noticed when I was putting this in that we've got a question here, question 5. What breed of dog or cat is your pet? Now, that's obviously relevant if your pet is a dog or a cat, but it's not relevant if it's a small mammal. So that's a question that some people won't be able to answer, or we don't want them to answer either. Now, we can make that question optional. As we can make any of these questions optional, as you probably noticed as we were going through. But really what we want to do is for the people who have a small mammal to not see that question. We can do that by adding what we call a question root. So I can add that in here. And it says, which question do you want your root to start from? And we've got plenty of explanation in here to help people to understand what they're doing with this as they do it. So I want it to start from this question about the type of pet. And then I've got some options here for how I want to structure the logic from that. So if the question is answered as small mammal, then we want to take the person not to this next question, what breed of dog or cat is your pet, but on to what type of achievement has your pet made. So this isn't full branching. We can't create separate different branches just yet to go to ask people different sets of questions. We can just skip a question based on the answer to another one. So that meets a whole bunch of needs that we know people have around forms, but we know it doesn't meet the needs of all forms. So this is our kind of first iteration of simple question roots, and we're looking at branching and more complex logic for future work. So I can save that, and we get that logic added into the questions and things in here. So we can then preview the form. So if I click on preview this form, then you get a view of what this will look like when it is published on gov.uk, albeit with a nice clear draft background, just to make sure that people are clear about that. So yeah, I can go through and complete this form as in the role of someone who would be what we call a form filler, someone who's completing a form. We can put this information in. Some of this is validated. We have postcodes in the UK, which is sort of standardized codes for deliveries and post office, and that's validated to make sure that it's people are putting it in correctly. You can put in the pet's name. And then you can see here how this guidance appears. So people get shown the guidance, they can read it, and then they can answer the question in here. I can click on dog. It'll take me through to that question of what breed or dog of cats or cat have you got. If I choose small mammal, then it will take me through to type of achievements, and I can read the guidance on that and decide that I'm going to submit it for an intelligent small mammal. And then I can put something in here. Now, I've noticed a mistake probably that I made here, in that I should have made this question optional, really, because we don't need everybody to be able to answer it. So I can just click on edit this question, and I can go into this page and I can click on there to make it optional, and then save it. So yeah, you can go in and you can edit and do these things. If I go back to create my form, I've got a few other jobs that I need to do. I can't make the form live yet, partly because I haven't finished these bits that say not started with this other information, and also because I only have a trial account. So if I've tried that out, the intention is that I've maybe figured out that I can do everything I need to with this current version of Forms. So I can click on here and I can ask to upgrade to an editor account. This kind of access model we've got at the moment that's launching in the next couple of weeks is called early access. It's kind of after our invite-only private beta. We're allowing people across government to create this trial account. And if they meet these various criteria in here, then they can let us know they meet the requirements and they can apply for an editor account. That's still going to go through a process with our adoption team where they're just going to check in and make sure that these forms are a good candidate for the early access that we're doing at the moment. We'll be working towards a public beta where this will become fully self-service for people with a gov.uk email address once we've built a few more features that we know people need for lots of their forms, and once we've tested it and got feedback from people from some different departments. So yeah, that's the demo. I can see there's lots of comments and questions in the chat. So I'm going to hand over to my colleagues, have a look at those, and we're going to have some time to answer questions as well once we've talked about a few more parts of our project.
Thank you, Oliver. Now I'm going to talk about the lessons we've learned from building this tool. We've conducted user research with form completers, and Go.uk forms were preferred to document-based forms. We observed people complete forms more fully and accurately when they were in the Go.uk forms format. There were lots of positive feedback about features that make Go.uk forms easy and clear to complete. During our alpha stage, we learned that different departments have different ways of working, and our aim is not to disrupt the process, but help them make their services better. In beta, working even closely with partner departments, we've seen each UK government department is like its own massive corporation with its own culture, environment, technology, and purpose. So we've learned to work with the constraints of the different departments while learning what problems we can solve and admitting those which we cannot. For example, some departments have built their own tools, which are more suited for their specific needs than Go.uk forms. We're not a service. We enable teams build forms in their service, which means that, to put it in bluntly, we can't fully prevent our users from making terrible forms, though we're trying to reduce that with our templating feature, which we will talk about shortly. But we can give our users the tools, guidance, and easy to use products so they can make these forms as user-centered and accessible as possible. For us, even a replica of a PDF form in HTML is a win for accessibility. So what's next for us? As of today, we have published 15 forms, putting us at 12% of that target. We're launching our next phase at the end of this month, which we're calling Early Access. This allows more users to try out the platform to see how it works and if it will suit their needs. Users will start at a trial level, as Oliver mentioned, and follow some steps to upgrade to an editor account with full permissions to create forms for Go.uk. But they won't be able to publish these themselves. They'll still need their own organization's publishing team to do this. Our provisional early access goals are 125 forms from 20 different departments. And our latest published forms are replace a lost or damaged MOT Center authorization certificate from DVSA and apply for a country parish holding CPH number in England from DEFRA, which both of these use the lovely adding detailed guidance feature. I'm going to hand over to Betty now to talk about the features to come.
All right, thank you, Hazal and Oliver. All right, so we have some features that we need to work on to help us move into public beta. Like Oliver and Hazal have mentioned, we are in early access. where we are still sort of managing the scalable platform, how the platform scales really. And so once we're done with early access, we'll be in early access for about 6 months, and then move to public beta. And in public beta, really, it's where now the product is in its live phase, and it's running, and we're supporting the service in a sustainable way and managing how it scales. And also at the same time, we'll be continuing to iterate, sorry about that, and make improvements. So some of the features that we're going to have to help us move successfully into public beta. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide again. Okay, so some of these features will be, first and foremost, they require a payment feature. So this is one that's a key feature that will help many teams to be able to use GovUK forms. So really, the payment feature is one where how we're asking, so how can people pay for a service while they're filling in a form? And at the moment, and in GDS, we have the tool GovUK Pay, which is also offered, and we're looking into probably an MVP feature, where we can integrate with this product, GovUK Pay, such that at the end of a form, users can access a payment link. Another important feature is the add another or multiple answers. So this is where, for example, a user can add extra rows or bits of information that they have already answered. So for example, it's a commonly used feature with questions that require, for example, address history or add an additional answer. And then the other important feature is self-service accounts. So this is so that users can be upgraded from the trial account that has earlier been talked about. So upgrading from trial to editor, and that can either be done by an admin who accepts the requests automatically within the department. So currently in early access, we will be doing that. So that means our team will not be involved in that account creation process, because it's going to be unsustainable as we scale adoption. The other bit that's very closely related to the self-service accounts is enabling team structures for department forms. Hazal earlier talked about how different departments have different ways of working, and therefore we want to help them work in their preferred ways. So for example, being able to give departments control and access to forms, and probably form their own teams within that, in terms of also being able for them to control who can edit, who can make changes to a certain form, and who cannot, because at the moment, all users within a department can see all the forms within it, for example. Yeah, and last but not least is the ability to upload documents and files. So this is a commonly requested feature, so that people can provide supporting documents and evidence that they need to complete an application. And once we have these features in place, we will be able to launch public beta. And once we're in public beta, moving on, we will have some more features that now we will be working with beyond public beta. Next slide, please. Next again, great. So once we are successfully running and managing public beta, we will be exploring, for example, other ways that we can transfer the data that users submit. So currently, data that's submitted is received via email, and we are going to be looking at other ways. So this could be through CSVs, files, or API transfers as well, and probably integrations with case management systems for the different departments. And this was going to provide us with very many possibilities. Then we'll also be exploring save and return, and this is so that people filling in a form can be able to start a form one day and complete it on another. This will be very useful for those very long forms, or forms that require a user probably to gather information beforehand before they fill in the form. And then we'll also be looking at templating. So templating commonly asked questions, so that we can reduce the risk of bad and inaccessible forms being created using our product. So it's a way of asking, so what are the commonly asked questions? And how can we provide this at easy reach for a form creator creating a form, and enable them to do this in an accessible way, and at the same time in a manner that helps them create the best content. And then we have version control. This is so that form creators can be able to look back at previous versions of forms that they once made. And so this is also going to make it easier for them to keep the past versions, revert to old versions if they need to, without having like a manual workaround around it. You're also going to improve the way that form creators can preview a form as it's being made. So as you saw earlier, when Oliver was presenting, so it's automatically not possible to see that side by side. Probably that's a solution. Probably we're going to find another way to do that. But at the moment, a user has to, the form creator has to preview the final form once they've populated it. But how can they be able to see the questions as they create them? Yeah, so this is a feature that we've had to go back and forth with it to ensure that it's very accessible, first and foremost. The other bit is complex routing. So we have a version of routing that Oliver has just shown. It's very basic and it's not usable with a very wide range of forms, and it allows a user to skip a question based on the previous answer. But now we want to allow our users to set up branching. So that means for completely different questions and for completely different answer types. And finally, as well, we have one of the features that is a basic matrix page that we currently offer. So this is an example of it. So this is actually a basic matrix page for a form by the DVSA. So this is a vehicle safety inspection center form. So this page right here, it shows us, and it also captures data that can tell a form creator how their form is performing at a glance. So for example, it gives a completion rate. So that's basically how many users have been able to get through the form from the first question to the last, really, to the submit button. It also tells what are the submission volumes in that week and the volume of forms that were started and not completed. So, but then it doesn't show which questions at which point they dropped out of the form. But we currently usually provide that data in other ways. And so with this basic matrix page, it allows teams to track their data over time, record their weekly data, and at the moment, that's where the improvements come in. So this is what we have at the moment, and the improvements that we will be making is so that teams can be able to see the trends, and especially if they need to information that helps them to know at what point do users drop off, and that helps them to know if a particular question is posing a problem. And we've had cases where many of our form creators have been able to edit their forms and make them better in terms of content, wording, and structure of the form from the data that they collect, from the data that we provide them in terms of the metrics. And so we will be improving this form and also make a way to also get form fillers to provide feedback and be able to also provide this feedback easily to the form creators. Yeah, and that brings us to the end of our presentation. We're very super excited to unlock more forms and see what GovUK Forms can offer to departments. So I'll hand over to Ian to help us take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our presenters. I know that Ian has been responding to some of the questions that have already popped up in the chat, but just for the sake of the recording and for folks who maybe aren't reading the chat, we're gonna re-ask and re-answer verbally right now. So there's still time to submit your questions. I'm gonna go ahead and kick us off with the first question, unless Ian, you want to moderate your team, but I'm happy to kick us off.
No, go for it. Thanks very much.
Okay.
I mean, I could lie and say it was all Oliver who was doing that. It was one of us. You'll never know.
All right, fantastic. So I think this first set of questions is directly related to the demo that Oliver presented. So keeping that in mind, the first question that came through was, do you have conditional logic as a function? Very technical.
Shall I jump in on the
Yes,
demo ones?
please do.
No, not conditional logic. We don't have just yet. So there were a couple of questions around this on the chat. So we started off with the sort of logic that I demoed, which is just being able to skip questions. You could skip more than one question, so you could create a whole bunch of questions that somebody then skips based on their previous answer. That solves some of the challenges that people have with forms. It doesn't solve all of them. We wanted to create this simple version first and see how it works before moving towards looking at more complex things like branching. And I think we're already learning a bit about how some of our users think about things like branching from testing this version with them. We don't want to jump too quickly to something super complicated because we're designing for users who are not that digitally confident. So we're sort of taking it step by step and trying to make it as easy to use as possible. But it's on our roadmap to keep developing that into more complex logic.
Thank you. What type of tools did you use to create this platform?
I can answer that.
Please.
So there are many tools we use in the government. If it's the design tools, that's Figma. Then we also use Heroku Prototyping Kit. It's like a semi sort of front-end coding tool that we use in the research space. And as far as I know, we use Ruby on Rails to build our service.
Great, thank you. Next question. Someone was saying that they were on the edge of their seats waiting to see if it supported conditionals, but I think we've answered that question. Can people outside of the UK request access to try out your system as form builders?
I'm afraid not. So, I mean, it's worth saying that, yeah, we are in private beta at the moment. So we've designed the form builder from scratch. So we built it from nothing to, so we had to start with quite basic features. It took us a long time to find the first form that we could actually work with a government department on. And so we're adding more and more features. We're being able to support more and more user journeys. But we really don't want to kind of start trying to solve anything and everything. We really want to focus on the core problems that we've set out to solve, and that's with kind of central government departments and for lower volume forms. So that's forms that have 10,000 or fewer transactions a year. So we think that teams who own those forms don't really have access to digital expertise. They don't have access to funds. They don't have any other tools they can use other than kind of standard sort of office tools. And so that's one of the reasons that we've got loads of kind of not so good inaccessible forms on published on gov.uk. So we think that some of the other teams, larger volumes, the digital services, we don't really need to focus on that. So we're trying to focus on kind of the core problems, and if we can solve those problems or help it, then we think there'll be widely kind of applicable use cases for lots of other teams. So we're looking at central UK government at the moment. We'd love to kind of broaden that out to other public sector agencies in the UK. We don't have any plans to kind of open up to non-UK agencies, but we publish lots of our code. We do kind of pretty much everything in the open. So if people are interested, then get in touch, and we can also have conversations about that too.
Great, thank you. This question is a bit related to more of the technical aspect. They're asking that during the demo, it looked like you were making a new page for every question. Is that baked into the form or editable?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that. So yes, it is baked in. It's part of the gov.uk design system. that we have to present this kind of thing in a one thing per page way of doing things. I've done quite a lot of sessions, user research sessions with form builders who often ask about this, and they often want to explore having more than one thing per page, which is interesting. Often they say that they feel like having to click through a form adds some friction for their users. I've done a bit of testing with end users, with people completing forms, and quite strong feedback from them that they actually really like one question per page. And so this is, one of those things that we're navigating different perceptions that people have of this. Yes, lots of users I spoke to liked the one question per page because they said that they could focus on one thing at a time and not kind of be distracted by other things. I've done some sessions where I've got people to complete PDF versions of a form and then an online version of the same form. And we've actually seen them give more complete information on the online form because of this, presumably because of this kind of getting distracted and navigating through the form being more difficult on the PDF form. So although some people push back on it, we seem to be increasingly seeing evidence that it helps people, it helps with accessibility as well. So that's good. We do want to keep an eye on that as we move to longer, more complex forms, though. I think there may be some challenges that might come up around that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I know at least for myself, I like to preview the questions, and then it is nice to be able to focus, but that's just me. A side note, do you include, back to the questions posed by our audience here, do you include standard answers to demographic questions to ensure equity and data alignment, or do you allow the author to enter their own?
We allow people to make up their own questions. So I posted an example of some like categories that we use as standards on some kind of UK government web pages. That's for ethnicity. So other kind of types of equity aren't captured in that. We haven't come across many examples of this so far with our users. So in our kind of early kind of state that we're in, this is the only example we've had so far. But yeah, I totally agree for kind of capturing data and being able to analyze that. Standardization would be better, and also helping people to kind of provide that information too. But then I guess you need a bit of kind of freedom as well, because some people will want to express themselves in ways which don't fit your kind of your set pattern.
Yeah, I can add a bit on that. Mm-hmm. And it's in the context of so we're creating the platform to enable the form creators to create now the forms where they will be able to take all aspects of diversity, inclusion, and equity into them building their questions. And so we have been exploring this for some answer types that give that opportunity. For example, I'd say the answer type that is one where you're providing your name. So where you're going to ask what is the name, or what is a person's name, right? So we allow a form creator to ask this question in probably three different ways. They could choose to ask for a full name, for the name, the first name, and the surname, and that's to take care of all scenarios that could emerge. I noticed someone in the chat mentioned that, for example, that was an issue for them where they are filling in a form and then they have a character count, for example. So those are the things that we take care. So we ask in these answer types, how do we create them in such a way that the form creators can create forms that are quite diverse and inclusive of all the scenarios that they're going to be encountering on their end. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm going to jump to a question, moderator privilege here, that's kind of related, and I think maybe would allow you guys to expand on the answer. Someone from the audience was asking that You may have mentioned this, but do staff have guidelines on writing/phrasing these questions? For example, at first, during the demo, it showed the selection for ask the person's name. They were hoping that the phrasing would be automatic so that each form would be consistent in the user's experience. Any thoughts on that?
I can touch a bit on that. So one of the features that we hope to have is a templating feature. So this feature will sort of capture what are the common questions that are created. So for example, the name question, an address question, date of birth question. And we want to ensure, again, like the person asked, that these questions have been asked in a consistent way that is in a better, simpler, and an understandable way. So templating will help us solve that, actually. So we're going to be capturing what are the commonly asked questions, and then providing a way that providing into the platform for the form creators to populate these questions without having to do it from scratch over and over again. And that's what's going to be creating the inconsistency. So otherwise, at the moment, form creators have to actually input the questions themselves. But then within the departments, form creators have the support of content designers and publishers who help them to review their forms and hopefully improve the content of their questions so that their forms are better. Yeah.
Great. Well, actually, Betty, related to what you were just saying, there was an earlier question that asked, is there any intention to develop two-way communication with these forms? For example, to allow departments to return the form for updates or changes, things like that?
I think that comes back to how we process data. So we don't actually store any of the form submission data on our platform. We send all form submissions via email to our partners, and they'll select like a team mailbox for form submissions to go to. And we really don't want to get into that whole territory of what we say under the general data protection regulations in Europe and the UK's version of, or GDPR for short. We are data processors, and we don't really want to be data controllers. So there are other provisions that we'd have to follow if we want to do that. So what we do is we receive the data and then we transmit that onto our partner organizations. We do that securely, but then the onus and obligations are on the partner department to safeguard that data. If we were to enable people to then update a form, then we'd have to have a way of storing that, which we don't currently do. We're kind of considering that for future use cases. So, we're not saying never. It might be something that we do turn to at the moment, but not during private beta.
Would it be helpful for me to show the example of what the form's output looks like? I've got that prepared, because I don't think we covered this too much in the presentation. So as Ian says, when someone submits a form, it gets turned into an email and then sent to the inbox that's set in that interface that I showed you. So each form comes in as a separate email looking something like this. This is just an example sort of mock-up from one of the departments we've been working with. So they get each of the answers that the person's put in different ways. You can see here this was an optional question, so that was skipped. We've got various questions that they all come in here. Oh, it's missed a bit off the bottom because it's a long thing, and it comes from our system. They can't reply to this email. Something that we're working on at the moment is making sure that people get a confirmation email. So this is going to the department, but the people who submitted it get a confirmation email so that they can they know who to contact and so on. So this might look to some of you to be sort of unsophisticated, I guess. It's just this information coming in an email. But what we're doing is replacing processes where people would have been downloading PDF files or Word files and sending them in. Sometimes they'd be printing them off, photographing them with their phone and sending them in. They might be coming in illegible handwriting. They would certainly be coming in as attachments, which people would then have to open and transcribe this information across into a CMS. So although, as I say, it might look unsophisticated, it's much easier for the processors to copy and paste this across into their case management system or whatever they use than having to open up a PDF, probably not be able to copy and paste it in many cases, bring things across. So yeah, there's loads more we could do. You know, we could allow people to download CSVs. We could interface with the database systems that they're using. We could set up APIs, all lots of work and lots of investment of time. So we're starting with the simple replacement that makes quite a big difference to the way people are doing it already. And then, you know, we'll keep going from there. One feature that we do have in the roadmap, though, is for people to be able to upload files and sort of evidence. Perhaps if they need to collect evidence, you can set up a question that someone would upload a file, and then that would be sent along with this email. Exactly how that is sent, whether it's an attachment or in some different format, we're just exploring and doing some user research on that. So it'll keep developing, but at the moment this is a lot easier than getting a handwritten photograph of a form that you then have to put in.
Oliver, can you just zoom in a little? Oh, sorry,
I can,
I'm not sure if everyone could read or see that. Thanks.
Should I make it a bit bigger? Is that better?
That's great, thank you. And you headed off some of the additional questions that came in with that response. So thank you, Oliver. I'm just looking at the time. We have 4 minutes. I'm going to try and breeze through some of these questions, but apologies to our audience if we don't get to your question. But coming back, one of our attendees here today said that they work with some public sector orgs who have sites outside of gov.uk. Is the plan to focus this tool only on central government departments who publish on gov.uk? If so, do you have ways to share your learnings with the wider public sector on forms?
Who wants to take that?
Well, I can mention that at the moment we have limited the platform to central government. So that's in our duration in private beta, now in early access, to forms that are being published on gov.uk, but we have intentions and to publish this, to enable the tool to be used by local government, especially, and other government sector organizations like NHS, and that's because they really need the tool. They really have asked a lot about it, and we see the need. But at the moment, we've been working with central government to prove the concept, ensure that it works, make improvements on it, and then we're going to roll it out. So it's not that we're not going to do it. We'll get to it at some point, probably in mid-late public beta. Yeah.
Amazing. So with just 2 minutes left here, I'm going to ask the final question, but I encourage folks to check your question because I do know that the team here was responding to some of these in the chat. You all received a lot of kudos for very impressive service and facilitating this process. So congratulations to you all. And then so with our final minute here, let me see. You've answered some of these, so I don't want to. Is there consideration for people who have no or limited digital access? Could this platform support proxy responses, i.e. people responding on others' behalf?
I think at the moment that's maybe more down to the design of the forms that people put together, perhaps. So there are a whole bunch of forms on gov.uk that are completed on other people's behalfs. sometimes in quite an official way by sort of solicitors or lawyers completing for somebody else. Sometimes there's a form that we're working with for where somebody completes a form on, or can complete a form on behalf of someone else to request some accessibility considerations for a particular public service. So at the moment, that's how some people are dealing with it. Also, these don't necessarily entirely replace document-based forms. We still have document-based forms as a backup. So there are options for some services where people can still download the file or even request a paper copy and complete them. We've got lots of opportunities across gov.uk for people to request different formats for forms, and those can be dealt with as needed. So it's an interesting one for us to think about a bit more about. Definitely at the moment there's sort of various ways to accommodate with that. Maybe we can continue thinking about that and see what more we can do.
All right, well, thank you. On that note, I'd like to again thank everyone for joining us today in our session, and a special thank you to our speakers, Oliver, Ian, Hazel, and Betty, for your time and expertise.